Yo, what is going on guys, Flashverse here and welcome back to another video on The Flash Season 7, and this will be my review and breakdown for The Flash Season 7 Episode 8 titled The People vs. Killer Frost. And yeah, we had some very interesting things taking place during this episode. We obviously had two main storylines during this episode, the main one being, as you guys can tell from the title of the episode, it's Frost related and her going on trial. And the other storyline being with our main storyline of the season, that being with the Forces, where we got to meet the human version of Fuerza, that being Alexa. And oh boy, we have to talk about that ending scene because it was crazy. But just giving you guys my quick initial thoughts on the episode before I actually go more in depth during my breakdown. I really liked this episode. I thought it was really good. The first half of the episode was a bit meh at first, but as we progressed and as things began to get more intense, I just got really hooked onto this episode. Like the second act of this episode was amazing. I really enjoyed it. It was just like the first half or like the first 15 minutes or so, which were a bit meh. But as I said, as things began to progress towards the end, I was really invested in this. I thought it was just great. And that ending scene, as I said, it was predictable, but it just happened in like a very shocking way, which I still cannot get over it. So before I actually get into the breakdown and review itself, spoiler alert, in case you guys haven't seen the episode, you have been warned because this is a review and breakdown after all. So I'll be going over the episode bit by bit as I give you guys my overall thoughts on it. So if you guys haven't seen the episode, then click off this video, go watch the episode and come back, because you certainly wouldn't want to hear these major spoilers from me, especially for this episode, because we got a main villain reveal. So if you guys want to know who that is, go watch the episode. But for those who are staying, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you are aware of more Arrowverse content coming your way. Okay, so this episode kicks off with Kristen Kramer in Argus at first, and she's walking in with a suitcase. And at first, when we just began to see this opening scene, I was like, wait, what is up with the suitcase and why is she at Argus? Which we obviously don't know at first, but as we get later into the episode, we find out what it is for. And it is that she basically brings up a backup cure because something happens later on, which she basically plans ahead of in case something went sideways. She's going to need another, backup plan so that Frost can still use the metahuman cure. So yeah, her going to Argus and basically getting more of this cure was basically part of her plan. But we then head over to Star Labs, and Frost is about to go on trial and she will face sentencing for crimes in the past, and I think she will be going to prison for like 20 years as far as I remember. It was like 10 or 20 years, it was something around there. And Team Flash just think it's ridiculous and they need to find a way to clear Frost's name and lower the sentencing because she hasn't been a villain for ages. She's been a villain like half of season 3 and then she's become a hero for like 4 years, so it's just unfair for Frost. So Team Flash are going to have to try and lower her sentencing because Frost did plead guilty. She did say, I want to basically pay for these crimes which I've committed. So yeah, that's going to happen and they're going to try and lower her sentencing as much as possible. But also Cisco's able to detect some isotopic signatures, and this is the Strength Force, so Fuerza is around, and Barry and the Speed Force head over to that location while the others go to Frost's trial. So we have Barry and the Speed Force getting confused when they arrive to the location because they don't find Fuerza anywhere. They just look around and see this like, non-profitable clinic. So there was no sign of Fuerza. So Barry was wondering like what was up with the satellites or stuff like that. And I thought that was a pretty funny comment. But at court, we have Cecile obviously defending Frost, and she's talking about all the good she has done and that she's teamed up with the Flash. And as I said before, they're trying to lower her sentence as much as possible, but the opposition on the other hand are not interested in that, and they propose another thing, which is that Frost needs to take the metahuman cure. Now obviously Team Flash are bothered by this because the metahuman cure was made so that it's basically a voluntary decision, like the person says that I want to take the cure and they take it. It's not something which is supposed to be forced upon them, and that is what Kramer is doing. So after a break, we have Team Flash gathered together, and Caitlin checks up with her mom to see if the cure will do harm to Frost, because there's a chance that the cure will kill her. And Caitlin just basically wants to go through extreme measures to save Frost, but Frost denies it, and she just wants to do things by the book to prove her innocence. Now when we head over to the Force's stuff, we have Iris on comms in Star Labs, and she's basically guiding Barry and the Speed Force. Now Barry and the Speed Force are arguing about what they will do with the other forces, and essentially we have the Speed Force pushing Barry to go after the forces, and that's essentially building up the main villain reveal for this half of the season, which I really liked. And Iris begins to question, what if the Force users aren't bad? For example, we did have Psyche, who was bad, but Dion didn't seem very hostile. And now if Fuerza is in like this environment helping people, it doesn't really seem like she's a villain. So Iris is able to detect some isotopic signatures inside one of the tents, and Barry and the Speed Force come across Alexa, which is obviously the human form of Fuerza. Now Alexa thinks that she's in trouble at first due to her dark past, because Barry's wearing a CCPD attire, so she's like, oh wait, am I in trouble? But Barry's trying to explain the isotopic signatures and the suspicion that she is Fuerza to Alexa as best as he can, but the Speed Force just ends up losing it, and she just confronts Alexa about her being Fuerza, which really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that at all, because she just explodes and she just directly lashes out on her. So I wasn't expecting that at all, but it does build Barry's suspicions as well, which was something which I really liked. But we have Team Flash coming up with a plan to go into CCPD and neutralize the metahuman cure so that it doesn't work on Frost if they intend on using it. And basically the plan involves Caitlin distracting the officer while Allegra goes to the area and neutralizes the cures. But it goes wrong when Allegra ends up meeting with Kramer, but she covers it up by saying that she was there to interview Kristen Kramer about something, in which Kramer is confused because she doesn't know about some sort of interview or whatever. But this was a positive for Team Flash because it allowed them to buy some time so that Caitlin can then use the device to neutralize the cure, and the plan works. They are able to neutralize the metahuman cure. However, it goes horribly wrong in the aftermath. So back on trial, we have Joe defending Frost, and he basically talks about how many people she has saved, in which the opposition uses the metahuman cure being neutralized in the same time CCPD CCTV cameras went off, and they basically put that blame on Frost. So yeah, Team Flash's plan put Frost and Cecile in some hot water in regards to her case, which was something I really liked because they ended up making it even worse, and that just becomes more intense. So that was something I really liked. And this is where we tie back into the Argus opening scene, but Kristen Kramer opens up her briefcase and she has some backup metahuman cure, which Argus was able to create more doses of that cure in case something went wrong with the actual metahuman cures. So over here now, Cecile is in a very troubled situation because she really doesn't know what to do, and we have Team Flash basically discussing what they will do next. And Caitlin's mother tells Caitlin that Frost would be fine if she took the cure. Caitlin is trying to convince Frost to basically take the metahuman cure and live her life again, but Frost says she would rather serve jail time than take the cure. She would rather serve 20 years in prison than take the metahuman cure because her powers are something which makes her herself. So that was something I really liked, and her like basically saying, no, I do not want to take this cure, I'd rather serve some jail time, in which we do have Caitlin being really bothered about this. But back in Star Labs, we have Barry, Iris, and the Speed Force talking about what they will do next with Alexa, and the Speed Force basically has a plan to speed in and basically test her, and Iris and Barry both disagree with that. They just don't speed in and grab people to do some testing, but they want to get their consent, and that just builds more up with the villain reveal, which was something, as I said before, I really liked. Barry begins to get more and more suspicious. Now Barry goes back and speaks with Alexa as the Flash. Now one thing I'm just not sure about is that why doesn't Barry no longer blur his face and modulate his voice, because it's someone who's he's talking to right in front of his face. So like, why doesn't he do that? Because in the previous seasons, that was something he used to do. So I don't know why he doesn't do that anymore. But Alexa begins to talk about how she's been having blackouts, and she basically ends up waking up in places she doesn't remember. And sometimes when she usually gets angry, she doesn't remember what happens next. So you do see that she is not a bad guy, but it's kind of like a Hulk situation where she is not in control when Forza takes over, but she is someone who has good intentions. But this is where Barry begins to notice that she isn't a bad person at all, and he, begins to question what the Speed Force is up to. Now we have Kristen Kramer and Frost confronting each other in like some interview room, and Frost questions why Kramer hates her so much, and this was something I really liked because it explains Kramer's motivations, but Kramer reveals that her past encounters with metas were not very good. One of the metas wiped out her whole army, so basically she's using Frost as an example to warn other metas. So that was something I really liked, and she doesn't just have beef with Frost, but Kramer wants to go after any antagonizing metas claiming they're heroes, not just Frost. So yeah, she does have plans to a bigger scale. But we then head back to court, and Frost talks about how taking away someone's powers takes away who they are as a person as well. It's not the same as like, taking a weapon off someone, and she is right about that. And she pleads to have a life sentence without parole over taking the cure, which ends up ruining Kristen Kramer's plan. And that was something I absolutely loved. It shows how against she is in taking the metahuman cure, because her powers, as she said before, are basically makes her who she is. So yeah, she's against taking the metahuman cure, and she says that she'd rather take a life sentence. And yeah, that was just something I really liked. And also she sacrificed herself to save other metas who may be in potential trouble against Kramer as well. So this was something I really, really liked. Now, one thing I'm very interested in seeing is what happens next with Frost. We do know that she's gone to prison and she's serving a life sentence. Now, does she end up escaping Iron Heights, or does she end up staying in Iron Heights? I'm not sure. I would expect her to escape Iron Heights and maybe join forces with Chillblaine as like some kind of villain. That would be something very interesting to explore, but really I'm not sure. But I'm very interested to see what's happening next with her character. But back with Barry, he's beginning to examine Alexa in Star Labs to see if she does have those isotopic traces. And this experiment almost turns Alexa into Forza. Like, while the experiment was taking place, she's beginning to turn like all blue, and she starts to get angry, and she nearly crushes the stretcher. And that was because it was activating her powers. She then calms down, and Barry basically checks up on her and basically calms her down, and she's back to like Alexa, but she's afraid of what she's become. And this is where the shocking part arrives, where the Speed Force attacks Alexa and betrays Barry. This is officially where the Speed Force has revealed herself as the main villain. And we do also have the Speed Force trying to attack Iris as well, which really caught me off guard once again, because her reasoning behind that was that Barry wasn't on her side. He was more focused on saving Alexa rather than just taking her down before Forza ends up threatening them. So we have Barry throwing lightning at the Speed Force so that he could try and defend Iris, but the issue with this is the Speed Force ends up absorbing Barry's lightning, and she basically fuses it with her like powers, I'm guessing, and she basically blasts that at Alexa, because her power was using Barry's speed and her speed to basically combine them together and attack the Force users, in which that is what happens. Barry throws lightning at the Speed Force without him knowing that it's going to affect Alexa, but the Speed Force is able to absorb Barry's lightning, and she basically fuses it with Barry's lightning, and then she directs that against Alexa and blasts her with it, and she's apparently dead. That's what it looks like. At least we have Iris going to check up on her, and it doesn't look good for Alexa, so it looks like she's dead, but I don't think she is. I guess we will have to wait and see. But yeah, it turns out my theory has been correct. The Speed Force has officially been revealed as the main villain, so that is something very interesting, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. And also, you do have to take into account that the Speed Force is officially the fastest speedster out of all of them, since it is the literal Speed Force itself. So I cannot wait to see how this challenges Barry, because she is going to be miles faster than Barry ever was. So I cannot wait to see where this goes. But overall, I loved this episode. I thought the Frost stuff towards the end was very interesting. The main villain reveal was very, very cool to see. Despite it being predictable, as I said during the start of this video, it happened in a way which you just wouldn't expect. So that was something I absolutely loved. This episode literally felt like a season 1 or season 2 episode for me, and I just cannot wait to see which direction this takes the storyline to. But overall, for this episode, I'll give an 8.5 out of 10. But yeah guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Be sure to tell me in the comment section down below what you guys thought about this episode. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.